One of those boomers who elevated freak into a compliment and turned party into a verb.
I was more worried about the mindless stunt he pulled in Norton's office because it meant Lenny's manic cycle could be kicking in.
The one on Mother's chest, noun that taught me scar, raised stripe where a breast had been.
This pitcher was the strikeout king of the league. People weren't supposed to hit home runs off of him, let alone me. I was not necessarily a long ball hitter.
I am a native Nebraskan. I grew up near the South Dakota border, near the Niobrara River. The name of the town is Napier, and Napier is disappearing like many small towns. Great place to grow up. I've lived in Lincoln for a long time. Lived in southeastern Iowa for a year or so, but mostly right here in Nebraska. I went to the University of Nebraska for my bachelor's in education. I have a master's degree in creative writing from UNL. I taught school here in Lincoln for years, elementary school. I've retired from that and I'm writing full-time. The influence of the plains, I think it's pretty important. I may not write about it in every poem, but all that space, that small town, the freedom of that small town, safety to run around till dark and ride my bike to the river with my cousin, that kind of thing. Very important. And then the subtleties of grassland, I think, are very important. I love prairie. I love the grasslands, the croplands. So there's that underpinning, I think, for a lot of writing for me. My family has been important in my writing. My dad's sisters I think of as my teachers, my aunts. They are cards, they are fun, they are inspiring to me. I had a fine teacher in elementary school, very important at that time, particular time for me. She didn't mind being different. She had gone away and come back to the hometown. That was real important. She loved learning and loved books, and she seemed to believe in me and liked what I wrote, and that was important. I didn't write then for a long time, got busy raising my family, but I signed up for Bill Clefcorn to come to my classroom as a poet in the school. And I started writing then. That's the story, I think, for many writers in Nebraska, that somehow Bill Clefcorn, a reading of his, or he came into the classroom, they were a student or a teacher there, and got started writing. Hilda Raz has been a great encourager to me, and that's really important to a writer. I needed to play softball and ride my bike and swim in the Niobrara and play with my dog and fight with my sisters. I needed all those kinds of things. I wrote for Mrs. Fisher in school. Then when I came to the university to write, I found that I liked it in my writing classes. That was good. But then quite a long period where I didn't write again. And the last 10 or 15 years I've been writing daily or nearly daily. Part of that is because of a writing group, the Prairie Trout, a group of 5 women. We meet to critique. We also go on camping trips together and those kinds of things. That's been a big encouragement to me. Okay. That group got started before I came into it. And it solidified with 5 women shortly after I was invited in. I didn't know the people very well, knew their work, they knew my work a little bit, and that's how it got started. Walking is a big part of my writing. I may not write about what I see as I walk, but that gets me into the mode of it. Things in nature inspire me, birds, people, the language of people, the idioms of small town folks or the idioms of my neighbors, my friends. An interest in language is part of it. I've seen in my writing that many times hands will be in the poems. I don't plan that, but I notice it. In Bones of a Very Fine Hand, my first book, a lot of those poems have hands, and they still are showing up in things that I write. Something I wrote today, didn't intend those hands to be there. Photographs, Bones of a Very Fine Hand has a lot of poems that deal with photographs, a lot of poems that deal with family. So birds, I've noticed too, and rivers and grass, those kinds of things tend to reoccur. It seems like it works to write whatever and then maybe look at it later and say, oh, I see I wrote that theme again. But also an important thing is to try something different. Different form will get you going on a different tack, which is good, I think. Try a sonnet, try a villanelle. Try writing with your lines looking like some poem that you usually wouldn't space your lines that way. That helps because you like something new to be happening. I don't think you can plan that, and you don't have to. It just happens as you write more. My husband likes to hear my poems. He likes a new one to be lying on the table beside his breakfast bowl. He likes humorous poems, and he likes the family poems. He's in a lot of the poems, and fortunately for me, that's okay with him. So he's one audience, a very important audience. I sometimes read them to my children, read them to my friends. Reading aloud helps because you can hear things that need to be fixed just from hearing your voice read them. I enjoy work that's on the page. I like that. There's a certain joy in how it looks on the page, where the line is broken. But also with that then, to hear it, that's good too, the oral part of it. And you don't need feedback from someone. You don't need someone to say, fix that part right there. You hear it. Your ear becomes trained to do that.
Yes.
That's what a writing group is, I think. It can be in the best. When it's working, it's an ear. The writing group is an ear that you read into. What they tell you about your work may or may not have that ring of crystal. You say, oh yes, that's what I need to do to it. That may happen, that may not. It doesn't have to, but to have that ear that you can read your work into, and that they would have the intent of making your poem do what it's wanting to do, not putting their stamp or their style on it. I like to bring across some humor in my poems because I enjoy that. I love to laugh, as my aunts do and my family, so that's fun. And then those insights that you can't know until you are writing that third page of the free write, and then that will show up, some insight that you are nibbling around on. So I think what I'd like is to paint pictures with words, images, and see if insights also happen. To people who want to write, I would say read, read, read. Read a lot. Read different kinds of things. I would say go to readings, because all those words washing over you is very stimulating. You won't write that way, perhaps you don't want to, but it's like a musician listening to other musicians and then going home and creating some new thing. I would also say to someone who wants to write to set aside a time in your day that works for you, and that's your time to write. Then your writing self, subconscious, whatever it is, gets used to that. Oh, this is my time. And you will get junk, and go ahead and write that. You have to write that junk. You could throw that away. It's necessary. You have to write it. And I'd say get yourself a friend, a group, if you like that kind of thing. And the way to tell if that group is good is the volume that you write. If you're writing more because of that group, or as you are in that group, then it's good. And if you find yourself shutting down, that means something too. That is probably not good for you. So I guess the main advice I would have is to write. Don't censor it. Don't worry about it. Fill up notebooks. Buy new pens. As far as publishing, writing is more important than publishing. But we do like to publish. That's for sure. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I got a very lucky break in that Backwaters Press, Greg Kosmiski heard me give a reading, liked the work, asked me for a manuscript, and they have published several books for me. I'm working on a manuscript of poetry of my own now. I'm writing new things that seem to go in that. So I want to work on that. You can get pulled away from your work, from your writing or putting a manuscript together by just about any good thing will take you off the track. Why poetry? Because there's nothing like writing a poem. I like to write fiction too, and I'm taking a fiction class right now, and I'm writing some fiction. There's satisfaction in that, but it's nothing like writing a poem. I remember hearing William Stafford say once, I'd give it all up to write a new one. And I think I know what he means by that. Because you learn as you write poetry. Maybe you do fiction too, I don't know about that. But that's why poetry. And because it's fascinating, and there's a community of poets in this area, which is so fine. It's a wonderful group. They help each other, they care about each other. So that's pretty neat. Why poetry in Napier, Nebraska? I think if you write about your experience, you are saying poetry about these ordinary things means that this ordinary town, I'm an ordinary person writing about my life. That seems to me to say, when anybody does that, we're saying the ordinary life counts. The ordinary life matters. And it seems like that's what poetry does too. So that's why poetry. And my town was a good town to grow up in with all that space. There are good places everywhere where you just start to notice things, whatever's around you. Your street, your people, your subway, your traffic. So whatever you have, that's your material. And you don't have to be from a certain place. You just have to make a commitment to your material, whatever it is. And that includes the sad stuff, too. I wrote a poem when I was taking a class in Omaha. It was a class that dealt with race relations. And you write a poem when you have learned something, or you're trying to learn something that won't fit into a small container. And the poem can't take it all either. But I remember singing that poem and saying it to myself as such a satisfaction. I don't even have a copy of it. I wish I did. But I remember the feeling of that. Then when Bill Clefcorn came to my class, I do remember this poem. I was writing about, what have I said already? That would fit for being interviewed. I was comparing it to scuba diving and being afraid of the water and afraid to go in. And then I realized I was afraid to succeed. That was part of it. That sounds kind of weird. But anyway, so the poem had to do with the fins and the waves and the rocks and the fish of the orange and yellow colors and the mask, and how I could hear my breath as I was doing this scuba diving. Or it's not scuba diving, what's the other one? Snorkeling. It's completely different, right? Snorkeling. And so that was one of the first poems that I wrote. After I've written something comes a real fun part. I love to revise and to edit. And that goes on sometimes even after the poem's been published. I'm still tinkering with it. That's a very satisfying thing. To revise then is an important part of it, and you don't ever feel that it's perfect, but you do have to move on. You have to let go of it at some point and go on to whatever's next. So I think you can get too bogged down in rebuilding the chair instead of build a new piece of furniture. Quit taking that one apart over and over and over. There's a balance to that.
My name is Joanna Lloyd, and I'm curator of the Heritage Room. Welcome to the Jane Pope Geske Heritage Room of Nebraska Authors and the John H. Ames Reading Series. The Heritage Room is a special collection dedicated to preserving and promoting the works by or about Nebraska authors. Currently, we maintain a collection of over 12,000 volumes written by more than 3,000 published authors from Nebraska. In one way of promoting these authors, the Heritage Room sponsors the John H. Ames Reading Series. This is our 144th Ames reading. We have been at this a long time. I would like to thank the Nebraska Literary Heritage Association because it is through an endowment established through their volunteer efforts that we are able to bring you programs like these. You should feel that you could come in to visit our collection during regular public service hours, for individual tours, or to enjoy the Heritage Room as a reading room where anyone who is interested can come in and read from our collection. Our reader this evening is poet Marjorie Saiser, or Marge Saiser, as some of us know her best. Marge Saiser is the author of 3 books of poetry: Bones of a Very Fine Hand, 1999, which won the Nebraska Book Award in the year 2000, Lost in Seward County, 2001, and Moving On, 2002. She has co-edited an anthology of writing by women of the Great Plains titled Times of Sorrow, Times of Grace. She has received the Literary Heritage Award. Most recently, her project has been Road Trip, a book of interviews with a dozen Nebraska writers. She is generous with her time, giving readings many places, leading writing groups belonging to writing groups, and offering support to many other writers. You may find that she writes with humor sometimes. I hope you do, and frequently speaks sometimes to our relationships with each other. I hope that you will enjoy this reading. Let me introduce Marjorie Saiser.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you all for coming and for your encouragement. We do need to encourage each other. I thought I would start tonight by reading some prose from Road Trip. This piece begins by talking about poetry and then about growing up in a small town in Nebraska. The town is Napier in north central Nebraska. Hardly anything remains of the town. Napier lost its school and it's disappearing. But it had been thriving at one time, and it was a great place to grow up with lots of space and a feeling of safety. Poetry can deal with the daily things of living, and when it does, it seems to be saying that ordinary people count, ordinary lives day by day. You can write poorly about this, as you can write poorly and sentimentally about any other topic, but you can also reach out to the edges of what you know and find the insights that occur to you. And then Shelley Clark asks me, what kind of things in your childhood do you see as influences on your writing? And here's my reply. Oh, I think the subtleties of grassland, the Niobrara and the Kippaha, those rivers I splashed in when I was a kid, the farmers talking about rain and the government, the Saturday night dances in my little town, hundreds of people dancing, my friends at intermission walking Main Street, some kids driving cars, making U-turns at the edge of town, driving up and down. My parents ran a cafe and we had our living quarters in the back. I waited tables when I got big enough, washed dishes, fried hamburgers. My parents had several pool tables in the basement of the cafe and also 2 bowling lanes. My sister Kathy and I set pins, jumping up and sitting on the side as the bowling balls rolled down the alley toward us. I played pool and snooker. I learned my math facts by playing cribbage with my mother. Cribbage teaches you very fast all the combinations that do and do not make 15. Besides the cafe, my parents ran the theater. So sometimes I sold tickets, popped popcorn, and then went upstairs to the projection booth where my dad was operating the machines. I'd watch the movie, a western or a comedy, with him, or I'd turn around and lean out the window and look down on Main Street. We ran the same movie on Wednesday and Friday, then a new one on Saturday and Sunday. I saw 2 movies per week, 2 times each. I heard stories in the cafe, farmers talking. My mother's a great storyteller. That was an influence on me, the way she always loved to tell stories. Birds figure in my poems as they figured in my growing up. The hawks and the kingbirds and larks. There's no sound quite like a lark on the prairie in the springtime. I'm stock still by the song of a cardinal. When I hear a cardinal, I equate it with my father. The kingbird as well, I connect with him, because a kingbird is silent, watchful, graceful. Growing up in a small town, having the run of the place, I think that was an influence. Biking on country roads, playing softball on summer nights until it was so dark you couldn't see the ball coming toward you. The freedom of that was important, as well as spending so much time outdoors. Having a great deal of solitude also had an effect. And I noticed that in the 12 writers interviewed in this book, many of them mentioned how important solitude was. Even some of them who are not introverts mentioned that. Then Shelley asks, did your teachers have an effect? And here's my reply. I had a teacher in grade school who influenced me. Mrs. Fisher loved learning, she loved books, she believed in me, she liked my stories. The fact she didn't mind being different from others was a powerful example. In high school, one of my teachers was a scholar. Mr. Titus held an extra class for 3 students, a Latin class, because he said we'd need Latin. He was already carrying a full load. He did that because he thought it was important. It was a very small school, but I was lucky. I had many good teachers. There were 19 in my senior class, the largest in the history of the school. My father and his 7 sisters had grown up on a farm during hard times. I considered them my teachers, vital influences because of the way they laughed and kidded and enjoyed life. Family was the important thing in their lives. The sisters are now in their 70s and 80s, living in Rapid City, South Dakota. I've written about them at their aunt's funeral or getting together to play canasta, talking about old times. I continue to learn from my aunts and to write about them. So here's a new poem about Aunt Clara. One day this summer I had the privilege of driving Aunt Clara around. She came from Rapid City for a day, and we went out to the farmhouse where she and my dad and their sisters grew up. This is called Aunt Clara Tours the House Where She Was Born. The house is empty, tenants having moved out and nobody, perhaps, ever to move back. So we push the white door open and go in like bandits. Enter this farmhouse on the high grasslands in north central Nebraska. This bedroom, she says, was 2. See this cut in the baseboard? That's where the wall used to be. Mom and Dad on this side, us girls on the other. On the stairs, she tells me her sister Margaret preached at the bottom, everybody else in their pews on the steps. That's what we played, she says, church. This was your dad's room. This window was what he saw. But imagine, no trees between you and the river. Back in the kitchen, its counter strewn with small dry bodies of wasps, she says, all changed. And her voice neither longs for nor glorifies. In the grove beyond the barn, this woman shows me where her father lay, dead a few minutes beside the buzzsaw, the broken blade still in his face. Above him the small green leaves of maples, flags not fully furled. Will you stay with the body? Someone asked her, while they went for whoever they went for. And she did. She's 84, white hair, wrinkles accordion on her top lip. They'll be my wrinkles soon. Blue eyes faded to hazel. You can always do, she says, her bony fingers on my shoulder, what you have to do. From Aunt Clara's mouth, this sounds like a promise. It sounds like a fact I can take along, as if she will send me forth in my car with a warm apple pie on the front seat beside me, her big-knuckled hands having wrapped it in a clean tea towel, its tart and sweet having commingled. The child that is me, ready now for the length of any long, dusty road home. My aunts are in this poem They are in their 70s and 80s, and they're being picked up one by one to go and play canasta. Aunt Margaret shows up in this poem. Apparently, the 7 little sisters, or some subset of them, were home alone in the farmhouse, and somebody came to the door, a salesman perhaps. They don't answer the door. They put a dish towel over Margaret's head and send her to bob in the screen door wordlessly. They get a big kick out of it. The poem begins with them in their 80s. My old aunts play canasta in a snowstorm. I ride along in the back seat. The aunt who can drive picks up each sister at her door, keeps the Pontiac chugging in each driveway, while one or the other slips into her overshoes and steps out, closing her door with a click, the wind lifting the fringe of her white cotton scarf as she comes down the sidewalk, still pulling on her new polyester Christmas stocking mittens. We have no business to be out in such a storm, she says, no business at all. The wind takes her voice and swirls it like snow across the windshield. We're on to the next house, the next aunt, the heater blowing to beat the band. At the last house, we play canasta, the deuces wild, even as they were in childhood. The wind blowing through the empty apple trees, through the shadows of bumper crops. The cards line up under my aunt's finger bones. 8s and 9s and aces straggle and fall into place like well-behaved children. My aunts shuffle and meld. They laugh like banshees, as they did in that other kitchen in the 30s. That day Margaret draped a dish towel over her face to answer the door. We put her up to it, they say, laughing. We pushed her. The man, whoever he was, drove off in a huff while they laughed till they hiccuped. Laughing still, I'm one of the girls, laughing him down the sidewalk and into his car. We're rascals, sure as farmyard dogs. We're wild card players. The snow thickens, the coffee boils and perks. The wind is a red tray, because, as one or the other says, we are getting up there in the years. We'll have to quit sometime. But today, deal, sister, deal. I feel lucky having grown up with those people and growing up next to the Niobrara. Lots of things, different kinds of lives you can feel lucky about, and maybe you feel that you're fortunate, that feeling of being lucky, even though bad things happen to us. Well, this poem kind of deals with that feeling of feeling lucky for no good reason. It's called What's Next? My life was roads leading out of town in shimmers of heat, my bicycle under me, leaning side to side with the strokes of my strong legs, small stones grinding under my tires. Or it was winter. Wind in the pale early hours, the sound of it whipping the branches at the corner of the house. Food in porous white bowls, bread in the wrapper, chocolate bars in silver paper. Sleep was a deep, sweet pond. My dog looked up from the tiles to see if I wanted anything, if I would go or stay. School was warm. I yawned, comfortable, or I worried and couldn't safely tell a soul. What's next? I'm still a spendthrift, a day here, a day there. I leave my umbrella in the car and walk slow towards the coffee shop. Each raindrop a coin striking my shirt. Now a car stops for the light, its windshield wipers waving, lucky you, lucky you. Well, everything is not always so happy. Sometimes you feel, I am not at home. This is called, I am not at home in my hometown. One night I pull what I know about it round the streets and houses, a wagon dragged by a dog in harness, my old boxer Freddie going where he wants. I walk beside his head, bumping his thick brown neck to turn him. Not at home, in the raised iron letters on the town pump, in the gravel of the road, the pebbles, chickweed, oil spots on the ground at the filling station. The mayor burns trash in the street next to the long clapboard of his grocery store, burns an old grapefruit he couldn't sell, and a few newspapers. If he were to call hello to me, his white breath rising from the ring of his mouth, I would stand under the streetlight, mute refugee in a circle of pale, cold light. I like to write poems when Don and I are on the road. Here's a new one called Past, Present, Future. Past, present, future. I love my husband's hand, the tan of it, the fingers working together, making a shape to hold the baby Ruth when I hand it to him in the car. The way his lips close to chew, the way he keeps watching the road. Our history behind us like semis bearing down. The future, a black Mustang with a loud muffler. We're following it as if attached, up hill after hill. We're on his tail, we're dogging him. Maybe this hill, maybe the next. Sunshine like a tight cap on his roof and trunk. And through the black rear window, we can't quite see who, if anyone, is driving. A little bit ago I read that poem, What's Next? This poem also deals with that idea of what's next. For this one you have to think August, cicadas, heat, summer evening. My husband and our son and my husband's father get together on Sunday nights for supper and to play cards. It's called After Playing Cards on Sunday Night. After he beats our socks off at Pinochle, 3 games straight, no mercy, we give Grandpa the other half of his T-bone steak, which has been waiting in tinfoil in the refrigerator. We follow him out to his car, my husband, my son, and I. A family we are on the driveway. And Grandpa backs out, drives home. We wave. What did I think my life would be? Sometimes, like now, I love a dog barking somewhere down the street, and the cicadas whirring and grinding in the oak. Oak, like the heat of August, tall over us. Oak, that which we did not plant. Our son, jangling his keys, goes also to his car. Now he stands, the door open, his hand on top the window, the last few things he has to say, and then he leaves. What did I imagine? Full and beautiful and ordinary dry grass of late summer. Hello, oak. Hello, moon. Hello, husband going in to read the paper. the back of your shirt, the back of your legs, now visible, now gone. Hello, nightfall. A small hot wind jostles a branch of the oak. Hello, whatever comes next. Here's a poem for rain and lightning and wind. Lying up against my husband in the dark. The storm wakes him only enough for 2 kisses and a mumble. The storm, a fine European lady he is not interested in. Her intermittent temper, her white arms and black taffeta. She's a fine one. She shakes out her dress. Oh, she's a beauty and she loves him. Let her pound her fist just above my roof. I'll keep him in the luxurious dark. I'll keep the scent of the skin of his back. She is blips of lightning. She is hammers, shimmers, demands, commands, ultimatums. Listen, there's a wind in the old broken cedar. Good night, fine lady. I have him in the den, the lair, the nest, the cave. The wastrel woman has him. The nobody lies up against him like a mortal, pretending to have rainy nights to squander, as if there is no gray hair against the pillow. The small town girl, the thief, the Neanderthal has him. Let's yawn, settle our arms into shadows under wave after wave on the roof of the cave. Thousands of drops on the shingles, thousands and thousands on the petals of the oak. One poem that I have a lot of fun with is I Want to Be a Man. You know, why not have it all? I want my voice deep out of my chest, like water welling up in a spring, hard water, rock dissolved in it. A good-looking man, why not? I want excellent teeth, tough skin like leather. I want a beard. I want shirts. I want biceps. I want to play basketball as if it mattered. I want to pound down the court, life or death. I want my hair to stick out and back over my collar, because bald is sexy and I know it. I want to take my guitar out of the case and thread my arm and neck through the strap. I want to sing a baby, baby song. I want to cook, want to chop onions with a big knife, chop hard, no faster, no slower than the onion and the knife and the board seem to need. I want to cook 4-alarm chili. I want to eat it. I want to eat jalapeno. I want to sweat. I want hair on my legs. I mean hair. I mean bristles. Whatever I carry, the plates, the ladder, the log, will be light as peanuts. I don't want to be a man. I don't want to be a man. I like the shirt and the sweat and the chilies. I like the chest hair and baby, baby. I want that, as I want all. I want to weep, man and woman, and to be done weeping, filled and empty at the same time. Man and woman and animal and vegetable and mineral. I want to write my poems. I want to break open. a papaya full of black seeds. I want to pour out, red as wine, into raised cups. You never make any money from poetry. The poets in the room and those people married to the poets in the room would probably back me up on that statement. This next one is a new one about not even being able to sell a little chapbook of poems. It's called Bargains. I could tell by something in the vicinity of his eyes that the guy didn't want to pay $5 for my chapbook. He had his billfold out, and he gave me 3 ones, and I said, "That's fine, that's great," though the price on the back is $7.95. But he figured he was a budding novelist at the next table, and I was a poet. And he liked the poem when I had read it at the open mic, and he just wanted that one poem. The one titled, "I Want to Be a Man." That was Friday night at the banquet. Saturday morning at the farmer's market on South Cottoner, I paid $4 for a muskmelon. It stunk up my car real bad before I got it home. And this is a poem about losing. It's kind of fun to list the things you've lost and just see where it goes. I lost the opal earrings, gift of love, left in the pocket of a bathrobe, washed away in a soapy stream down the slick, dark pipes. When I lost the turquoise earrings, I said, "They will return, they will return," the mantra having worked before, but not this time. I lost a bracelet, new heavy silver band, small turquoise egg, over my young wrist. I left it in a Phillips 66 restroom, a lucky find for the next girl. Or perhaps she gave it to the clerk at the counter in case we came back, which we didn't. Miles down the road, I thought of it, stricken. My father chalking it up to experience, to learning the hard way. I didn't learn. Left my sunglasses hanging on a soap dispenser. My black cat eye sunglasses, the black veneer having rubbed off where my fingers held them to put them on, the white showing through the paint where my fingers from habit touched them. We touch each other's faces, here and here, earlobe and lips, thumb and index finger, here and here, softly along the line of the jaw, eroding surely the shape of what we will lose. I baked some pies this morning to take to our grandchildren. We're leaving early in the morning for Minneapolis. I baked 3. My Aunt Clara likes to bake pies. I once watched her bake 9 pies one morning. She's 84, so I figure, maybe by 84 I'll be able to bake 9. This poem has Aunt Wilma in it, and Aunt Wilma is calling about a death in the family. This happened last spring, and I was baking pies that day. I baked pies all morning. Partway into the lemon meringue, and before the apple, and way before the chocolate, the phone rings. Aunt Wilma calling from South Dakota. And I know it is bad news as soon as I see her name in the little window of the caller ID. My cousin's wife died at 4:45 this morning. The thick lemon filling steams when I pour it into the pastry shell and scrape the pan. I beat 5 egg whites for the meringue. The recipe says 4, but extra is good. And I pile it on, the top of each swell falling over on itself. I start on the apples, peel them with my favorite 20-year-old paring knife. My fingers and palm rounding to hold and turn each heavy, solid fruit. 4:45 this morning on the East Coast. I go downstairs and email my sisters and my kids. The phone rings. My grandson in Minnesota calling about the new coat I sent him. FedEx just brought it. He likes the hood, likes the color. I'm grateful. You never know what a 7-year-old will take to. You never know anything. Above the apples, the crust slowly browns, ripening, taking on minute by minute the smallest part of the hue it will be. I'm thinking last summer Jeanette was fine, which is what I say when my mother calls. And my mother says it too. We tell each other, she looked so good. My husband calls on the other phone. My mother says she'll hang on. My husband stands beside his truck on the other side of town. He's calling, he says, because wave after wave of geese have just flown over South Lincoln. And he happened to be going to the truck for tools, he says. He happened to hear them, wave after wave, and he thinks I would like to have been there and would have stopped and stared and waited. So he says he called me. I do not tell him any bad news. Thanks, babe, I say. And before both of us go back to the rest of the day, I tell him, keep those goose reports coming. Which is more important in poetry, form or content? Or in life? I wonder. The pelican's dive looks like a fall. Have you seen them? The pelican's dive looks like a fall, a mistake. His head goes in okay, bingo. But then the tail flips over the fuselage, and the neck has to compensate. After a while, the whole thing wobbles upright with a fish for dinner. Is that okay? Is content greater than form? Do the spine and ribs of the fish, its tough curved gills, the slick skin of its youth and middle age, these things which now surely begin to lose all sheen in the tract of the bird, do these constitute the greater part? Or is it grace? Is it form? The way the pelican taxis over the surface of the water, tilting, correcting. Done for now with awkward flapping, as if gliding purely on the skin of truth, as if sliding across the belly of the sea. I'd like to end with the one finger wave, the kind of sandhills wave, you know. My aunts grew up with that. You keep your hand on the wheel and you just raise one finger. And I grew up with that too. But the poem starts out at Lake Superior before it gets down to the sandhills. One finger wave. I say silly things like, "Hi, honey," to Lake Superior when I round a curve on US 61, and there she is. There, too, the full moon. The full moon and Lake Superior, the two of them together, a narrow silvery path across dark waves. I greet celestial bodies like old friends. There you are. Or at a girl, to billions of cubic feet of water and bedrock. Hang in there, bud, to the single birch in a herd of maples. A greeting passed between wayfarers. Like the one finger wave between ranchers on the highways through the sandhills of Nebraska. A one finger wave on a long stretch of road. A cattle truck loaded with Angus going south meets my Ford Motor Product going north. Momentary camaraderie. An interstice, a finger wave. Our windshields face one another, my hands on the wheel merely knuckles, until the proper moment, the precise distance. And still holding on, I raise my index finger, the stranger will do the same, as if to say, in these most solitary orbits, we are sometimes not alone.